Good evening. Thank you for watching our current affairs briefing in English. Today we'll be speaking with Caroline Muscat, the editor of The Shift News. Caroline, thank you for welcoming us to your office. You've been pivotal in the fight for corruption and organized crime. What motivates you?
What motivated me, I've been a journalist for more than 20 years, but what motivated me to launch The Shift was the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia, because I felt that we can't let a journalist die and continue doing business as normal. I think we've come a long way. It is our 6th year. It is also unfortunate that in 6 years we still don't have full justice for Daphne Caruana Galizia, but our mission remains true. And it has obviously evolved in the sense that we are now fighting for press freedom for the broader majority. We have a media landscape in Malta that is problematic, so the fight continues. We have the public inquiry recommendations, none of which have been implemented. So we believe there is as much purpose today as there was when we launched to make sure that her death was not in vain. We've obviously moved forward in our journalism. We do an amount of cross-border journalism. We are an investigative news outlet, so we're different to what everybody else does in the country. And we think that now, more than ever, this mission remains important.
What about closure on the Daphne Caruana Galizia case?
A closure will come when there is full justice.
And when would that be?
That is not up to us. Our job is to continue to take her stories forward, continue to drive the message that the rule of law is important, because none of what we do as journalists makes sense unless rule of law is in place. And that is our primary mission.
Can you give me your comments about the political climate in Malta post Daphne's death?
I think there was a strong movement thanks to civil society and also journalists, investigative journalists, a handful of them, who insisted on pushing forward her investigations. The work that we have done with other newsrooms over the last 6 years have proven that she was right. The other problem is that we have a media landscape compromise, as we said. Most of the media in Malta is owned by the political parties. PBS is an extension of the government. It does not act as a public broadcaster, it acts as a state broadcaster. So there's only a handful of independent media who are attempting to hold government to account. And because of the financial situation that most newsrooms are facing, now there is a call, for example, for state funding. We feel that every day our independence is eaten up a bit more and more. We are fighting this. We are also fighting 40 cases that the government has launched against us to silence criticism about corruption and the scandals. And this is why we're organizing the conference next week. It's an international conference with an impressive lineup of international speakers. And we think that is important because we need something to break.
Tell me more about the conference. Who is it open to?
It is open to everybody. The speakers who are coming are people who are media experts, legal experts, press freedom organizations who are coming together here in Malta. Why in Malta? Because Malta is one of the top 3 cases where slaps are happening. What are slaps? Slaps are abusive lawsuits filed against journalists and newsrooms to silence criticism. And there is a debate going on at the moment in Brussels. It's a 5-year negotiation to protect journalists from these abusive cases. Let me try to give you an example. A foreign businessman that we write about files a case in a foreign court in Europe or in the US or wherever. The amount in terms of fines that you are facing amounts to millions. And what right has this individual to file this case? We have a judicial system, and that is why Europe is trying to address it, where you have no consequence if you file an abusive lawsuit against a journalist. Now, for example, I'm facing 40 cases, me, personally. The idea, the aim behind these cases is to drain your energy, your resources, your time. And after you go through all this and you manage to keep your newsroom alive, there is absolutely no consequence for the person who filed the court case. So they have nothing to lose, and we have everything to lose. So this is what the discussion is about. Because this is not only about journalists. If journalists are silenced, we're the 4th pillar of democracy. So if journalists are silenced, it means that people, voters, are not getting the information that they need to make informed decisions.
40 cases, Caroline. How will you proceed going forward?
We have been fighting these cases for the last 2 years. It has drained us in terms of our resources, our time, our energy. The important thing is that it takes away the time that you should be dedicating as a journalist to investigations, not to fighting these legal challenges. And every single one of those 40 cases was filed by government institutions or their agencies. Mm. So we have topped the list in the latest studies of newsrooms in Europe who have to fight these challenges. And they're not coming from businessmen, they're coming from the government. Mm. It is again a reflection of the dire situation that we have in terms of the media landscape in Malta, the dominance of the government in the public sphere, and the continuous harassment that we have faced in the last 6 years just to survive.
As an independent media house, how do you make ends meet with regards to funding?
Yes, we created a different business model, which was not easy. We said we are not taking any money from political parties or from the government, because we really need to prove that a different business model is possible that is not dependent on the political parties. We have proven that this can be done. And the fact that we have faced so many of these cases since our inception shows also the solidarity that we have found from international press freedom organizations who understand that the situation in Malta is problematic.
With these cases, what's the outcome usually?
We have won, we are winning, it's ongoing, because there are cases at tribunal level and then there are cases in court. We are winning every single one of them, despite us being at a disadvantage. But the cases are still ongoing. We still have at least another year of all of this. But what is important is that with every single case that we win, we set a precedent. So now, when we file freedom of information requests and the government, and we ask for a list of, and the government says, such a document does not exist. The courts have now ruled that that is not a justifiable reason. But it's been 2 years, and it's taken everything that we have to fight this. But the important thing is that we are setting a standard. And the difficulties that journalists have been facing when they're filing freedom of information requests and getting these answers that mean absolutely nothing because they're not even. Now these journalists have a precedent that says, you're not right, the government is not right, the shift has proven this, there is a precedent set, and you must provide the information.
You and your team are constantly working to investigate, to break stories. Can we get some more information and insight into the case with Air Malta?
We started investigating Air Malta, we started reporting on Air Malta 2 years ago. We said exactly what is happening today. And it is significant that the government over the last 2 years has kept saying that, no, the shift is not right, this is not what is happening, etc. Which again goes to show the government's attitude towards the media. A lack of respect to what is being reported. It is protecting itself rather than speaking in the public interest. And what we are seeing now is that what we reported 2 years ago, exactly what we reported 2 years ago, is happening. And now we're talking about the consultants that we mentioned 2 years ago. And we said there is a problem with these consultants. They have a past shady history. We're paying them exorbitant amounts of money. And these are the same consultants that the government has now recruited on this seamless transition that Air Malta is supposed to be having. There's going to be a problem before we've even fixed the last problem. But the point I want to make here is the fact that, again, it reflects the government's attitude towards journalism, its failure to answer questions from journalists, its failure to explain itself to the public when millions are being spent from public funds, when you have the finance minister saying we're in trouble, and we should, hold back costs, and then you see the government doing none of this.
Can we talk about some other stories that are maybe stories that people in the public need to know about? Because sometimes it takes a long time for the actual storyline to sink in.
Yes, in the last 6 years, as I said, our mission was to drive forward the investigations of Daphne Caruana Galizia. So the hospitals deal, electrogas, all of that, we have been pushing forward. The problem is not the work of journalists. We're doing the work at times that the police should be doing. The problem that we have is that on every single thing that we expose, the police are not acting on it. And it is the impunity that the public inquiry said was the cause of Daphne Caruana Galizia's murder. So we have learned absolutely nothing. And every single day, on any story that we publish, whoever the person is or whoever the company is, the problem is that when the police don't act, then we are in danger. There's a single new person every day. we tend to think of organized crime as more of a cross-border matter. It is, however, problematic. It shows, again, a network in which this impunity can survive, and it shows that the government's priority is not the well-being of society. It is making sure that it can have another term. And let's keep in mind that this is a government in which high-level political members are implicated in a number of different scandals. So if the government is not acting against its own, if the government is members of the government are continuously being associated with members of organized crime, then that is why people are saying it's a mafia state.
Are you able to give us an update on what's happening with former Prime Minister Joseph Muscat?
I think there are very serious questions, if not answers, about how his fate is linked with that of Prime Minister Robert Abela. I think it is a fact at this point that Robert Abela is there to make sure that Joseph Muscat is protected. Then you have to ask the question, what does he need to be protected from? This is very clearly now, and it's showing in surveys, that it is leading to a lessening of the popularity of the Labour Party in government, because people have just had enough. And when you see the polls at the moment, these are not, nationalist, traditional nationalist voters saying they are returning into the folds of the PN. These are Labour voters saying they will not vote Labour. The rot is just too deep. And I think Joseph Muscat has a very important role in this. I think we need still to have answers about the role of Joseph Muscat and Michel Muscat in various scandals that have erupted. And we hope to finally, eventually, come to a stage where we can clean the slate and start to rebuild the country again.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on European elections? What do you think the outcome will be?
I cannot predict the outcome. I think the candidates being put forward by the Labour Party are a reflection of the internal conflicts that the party is facing. The PN has its traditional strongholds in the MEP elections, and those will be there again. Whether the extra seat goes one side or the other still remains to be seen. But what we do hope is that the MEPs continue to stress the need for reform in the country. Because at the moment what we have is the MEPs of the party in government calling the other MEPs, traitors, or, wanting to damage Malta, even journalists, wanting to damage Malta, and all of this. This kind of discourse needs to stop. We need reform, we need justice, and we need peace.
Caroline, it seems no matter what you reveal, nothing ever happens. That's how it feels like from where I'm looking. What are your comments? What do you think?
That is exactly the problem, that every day, every single day, we reveal new scandals. And what's happening is that people are just getting tired of the scandals, because over the last 6 years, there is no police action, there is no real investigation. When there is an investigation by, for example, the Standards Commissioner, it is either ignored or just toes the government line. And this is what is making people lose their hope. It is about governance. And I think we are in a situation where it has been amply proven that we have a serious lack of good governance in the country, a serious lack of the rule of law. And the scandals increasingly that we are revealing is about how these scandals are hushed, how the people involved in these scandals are protected. And that is why we need change in the country.
Can you compare Malta to any other countries who experience this corruption and this style of governance?
There's a number of countries, of course. There is a general deterioration in the rule of law across several countries. Only last week I interviewed Karolina Farska, who organized all the protests in Slovakia after the murder of Jan Kuciak and his fiancée Martina. We used to look at Slovakia and say, you see how much further they've gone than we'd have. The judicial system worked faster. The government was replaced. So we said, and what she told us last week was that everything is coming back. The battles fought and won are backsliding. So there is a threat to democracy in general, obviously in democratic countries. But there is this threat, this pressure that comes from different factors. It comes from different factors. And Malta is not immune to this. Malta is part of it. But, you know, this is our particular context. And we know that our problems are deep-rooted. And it takes, from my point of view, more people who need to stand up and say, this is not okay.
Thank you. That was really kind of you to share all this information with us. Before we close, can you tell us a bit more about your event for those who are watching us today and perhaps would like to come?
Yes, on Friday we have an international conference that we are hosting in Malta. We have an impressive lineup of international speakers who are media experts, law experts, press freedom organizations coming down to discuss the fact that increasingly businessmen and governments are using the law to silence journalists. How this is being done, the fact that it is increasing even in Europe and worldwide, and to see what we can do to address the situation. And that's why we're bringing so many international experts together. So they have the time to network and to discuss what can we do. And it is important to mention again that Malta is one of the top 3 countries in Europe that is facing these where journalists face these abusive lawsuits. So it's an extremely important conference. We are there to debate, to network, and to hopefully find some solutions.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for joining our program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching. We spoke with Caroline Muscat, editor of The Shift News, for our current affairs briefing in English today. Should you have any comments or queries, as usual, please send them to the number that appears on the screen. We're stopping for a short commercial break. I'm Hogg for Net TV.